In 1777, a 16-year-old girl climbed onto a horse in the middle of a thunderstorm and rode 40 miles through the night to warn colonial militiamen that the British were burning a town to the ground. Paul Revere rode 20 miles. On a clear night, with 2 other riders helping, this girl rode alone, in the rain, at twice the distance. She reportedly fought off a highwayman with a musket, and you've never heard her name. Or, did any of it actually happen? This is the story of Sybil Ludington and the mystery of why we remember one midnight ride and forgot the other. April 1777. The American Revolution is going badly. Sybil Ludington is the eldest daughter of Colonel Henry Ludington, a militia commander in Dutchess County, New York. She's 16 years old. She lives on a farm with her parents and her siblings. She's the oldest of 12. Her father isn't a famous general. He's a local militia leader, the kind of guy who organized his neighbors into a fighting force because somebody had to. His troops weren't professional soldiers. They were farmers, blacksmiths, shopkeepers. When the fighting was done, they went home. When it started again, someone had to ride out and gather them. That someone was usually a messenger, a soldier, an adult. On the night of April 26th, it was none of those people. That night, a rider arrived at the Ludington farm with the devastating news. The British had attacked Danbury, Connecticut, a major supply depot for the Continental Army. They were burning everything: weapons, food, tents, medicine, everything the Revolution needed to survive, going up in flames just 25 miles away. Colonel Ludington needed his militia, but his men were scattered across the countryside, at their farms, in their homes, asleep. Someone had to ride out and rally them. The messenger who brought the news was exhausted. He'd already ridden hard to get there. The colonel couldn't go himself. He needed to stay and organize the troops as they arrived. According to family accounts, Sibyl stepped forward, and this is where the story goes from interesting to insane. Picture this. It's the middle of the night. It's raining, not drizzling, pouring. The roads in 1777 aren't roads. They're dirt paths through dense forest. There are no streetlights, no GPS, no phone to call for help. And a 16-year-old girl rides into that darkness, alone. The route, according to the family accounts, took her on a 40-mile circuit through Putnam County. She rode south to Mahopac, then to Kent Cliffs, then looped back north through Stormville and on to Pecksville, banging on doors, shouting the alarm. The British are burning Danbury, muster at Ludington's, 40 miles on horseback, in the dark, in a storm. Think about that for a second. 40 miles on a horse is not a casual ride. That's 4 to 5 hours of hard riding. Your legs ache, your hands go numb from gripping the reins in the rain. The horse is tired, the mud sucks at the hooves. Every shadow in the forest could be a British scout, or a loyalist sympathizer, or a bandit. And according to the 1907 account, published by a family friend, she did encounter a highwayman along the way and drove him off by swinging her father's musket. By dawn, she had mustered most of her father's regiment. The militia marched to Danbury, and while they arrived too late to save the town, they engaged the British forces as they retreated, fighting them at the Battle of Ridgefield. But here's where this story takes a turn you won't expect. General George Washington, according to family tradition, personally thanked Sibyl for her bravery. She later married Edmund Ogden in 1784, had a son, and lived a quiet life. She applied for a war pension in 1838 based on her deceased husband's military service, not her own ride. The pension was denied because she couldn't produce a marriage certificate. She died in 1839 at 77 years old. No fanfare, no monument, no poem. And here's the thing that should bother you. 2 years before Sibyl died, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was already working on the poem that would make Paul Revere immortal. Paul Revere's Ride was published in 1861 and became one of the most famous poems in American history. Every American kid learns that poem. Every American kid knows Revere's name. He rode 20 miles, with 2 other riders, William Dawes and Samuel Prescott, sharing the route on a clear night. Sybil Ludington, if the accounts are accurate, rode 40 miles, alone, in a storm, at age 16. And the only reason you know Revere's name and not hers? A poet liked the way Revere rhymed with here. But wait, there's something else going on here, something the popular version of this story doesn't tell you. Here's where we have to be honest. Because the hidden chapter doesn't just tell you stories, we tell you the truth about those stories. The historical evidence for Sybil Ludington's ride is thin. There are no contemporary accounts of her ride, no diary entries, no newspaper reports from 1777, no military records. The earliest known written claim comes from 1854, 77 years after the event, in a letter by Sybil's nephew, Charles H. Ludington, who wanted his aunt recognized. The first published account appeared in 1880 in Martha Lamb's History of the City of New York. The most detailed version came in 1907 in a posthumous publication of her father's memoirs by a family friend. Sibyl herself never wrote about the ride. Her 1838 pension application, the one place where mentioning a daring wartime service would have helped her case, says nothing about a midnight ride. The Smithsonian magazine investigated and found that scholars largely questioned the story. The contemporary newspaper accounts from May 1777 suggest the Americans, including Danbury residents, already knew the British were coming. So here's the real mystery. Not, why didn't we learn about Sybil Ludington? But something harder. Did the ride happen the way the family said it did? Maybe, maybe not. The Danbury raid was real. Colonel Ludington was real. The militia did muster and fight at Ridgefield. Something happened that night. But the specific details, the 40 miles, the thunderstorm, the highwaymen, come from family tradition, not from documents written at the time. And that is the hidden chapter within the hidden chapter. History isn't just about what happened. It's about who wrote it down, and when, and why. Paul Revere's ride was also exaggerated by Longfellow. Historians know the poem takes serious liberties with what actually happened. But Revere left behind letters and depositions. There are contemporary accounts. The documentation exists. Sybil Ludington's story was carried by her family for 77 years before anyone wrote it down. That doesn't mean it's false. Oral history is how most of human experience was preserved before the modern era. But it does mean we have to hold the story differently, with respect for what it represents, and honesty about what we can and can't prove. So why does any of this matter? Because whether Sybil Ludington rode 40 miles or 20 or 10, the question underneath the question stays the same. Whose stories get remembered and whose get forgotten? Paul Revere became a legend because a poet wrote about him 86 years after his ride. Before that poem, Revere was a footnote too. One man, one poem. And suddenly every kid in America knows his name. Sybil Ludington's family carried her story for decades, waiting for someone to listen. When they finally got it published, the world shrugged. A U.S. postage stamp was issued in her honor in 1975. There's a statue of her in Carmel, New York, a 16-year-old girl on horseback, riding into the rain. Most people walk right past it. History isn't just about what happened. It's about who had a poet,